Ever try prying a tablet away from a kid?
Oh, I know exactly what you
It's
mean.
like they become surgically
Well,
attached.
it's an extension of their arm or something.
You brought us some fascinating research on screen time and kids today, so let's dive into this digital dilemma together.
Yeah, and it's a question so many parents are grappling with these days, right? It's not just about like the sheer hours in front of a screen,
Right.
but how this impacts a child's developing brain, especially when we think about things like language development, their critical thinking skills, even their attention span.
So, kind of like their brains are still under construction,
Hmm.
and too much screen time is like bringing in a jackhammer.
Exactly.
Well, what they really need is like a fine-tipped brush.
That's a great analogy. It's all about those back and forth interactions, those conversational turns that are so crucial for language development. Think about it. A young child learns language by actively engaging with their caregivers, responding to cues, experimenting with sounds.
Right. Yeah.
Screens, however engaging they may seem, they just can't replicate that.
It's just not the same, is it?
Exactly. It's a different type of engagement.
I remember reading a study, I think it was from the University of California, that really drove this point home. They found that toddlers who had more face-to-face interaction with their caregivers actually showed greater activity in the areas of the brain associated with language comprehension.
Wow.
And get this, these positive effects were noticeable even years later.
That's incredible. It really highlights how those early interactions shape the brain, and it underscores why those age-specific recommendations are so crucial.
Especially in those early years, right?
Absolutely, those formative years.
So let's break it down, starting with the littlest ones. We're talking babies, toddlers,
Hmm.
that stage where everything is like a fascinating new discovery.
Yeah.
What does the research say about screen time for this very young age group?
Well, for babies under 18 months, the recommendation is pretty clear. No screen time,
Really? None at all.
except for video chatting.
Okay, that makes sense. So they can still connect with family and friends far away.
Exactly. But in terms of like passively watching shows or playing games,
Right.
their world is already a sensory explosion at that age. They need more of those tangible, real world experiences, to build those foundational cognitive skills.
It's amazing to think about how much their little brains are soaking up just from interacting with their environment and with us at that age.
Oh, absolutely. And as they transition into the toddler and preschool years, things don't change drastically in terms of the need for real world experiences. Of course, the occasional high quality show can be okay,
Sure.
but it's all about balance and, more importantly, engagement. This is where co viewing becomes so essential.
So no more using the tablet as a babysitter while we try to catch up on emails.
Well,
Guilty as charged, by the way.
I think we've all been there. But yeah, instead of just plopping your little one in front of a screen, think of it as an opportunity for connection. Talk about what you're watching, ask questions, point out interesting details, or even better, turn off the TV altogether and do something offline together.
It's like that old saying, turn off the TV and go play outside.
Right.
Except we're saying it in a world where outside
Yeah.
often involves, like, even more screens.
Exactly. It's tricky. But even in this digital age, those alternative activities, those offline experiences, they're still so crucial. Remember those tech-free zones we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
They're not just about limiting screen time, they're about creating space. Space for those other enriching experiences that really help kids thrive.
I've been trying that whole no phones at the dinner table rule at home, and it's amazing how much more we actually talk when we're not all just staring at our screens.
Oh, I love that.
My teenager even admitted, kind of begrudgingly, but still, that it's actually nice to have a conversation without the constant dinging of notifications.
That's a major win. And it shows how important those tech-free zones are, and not just for kids, for adults too, right?
Totally.
Reclaiming those spaces for connection, for mindful interaction. But as we all know, simply banning screens, it's not enough. Especially as kids get older,
Yeah.
that's where having that toolbox of alternative activities comes in handy.
Oh, absolutely, because let's be real, telling a kid to go use their imagination,
Right.
it's not always met with, like, tons of enthusiasm.
Eat a little more?
We need some concrete ideas, something to spark that excitement for offline adventures.
Exactly. And the beauty is, these activities don't have to be complicated or expensive. Think back to your own childhood, what got you excited. Was it building forts out of blankets, putting on plays in the living room, getting lost in a good book?
Oh, I was a master fort builder. I even had a designated flashlight, for maximum ambience.
There you go.
It's funny how those simple things can be so captivating to a child's imagination.
It's true. And the best part about those kinds of activities is they naturally foster creativity, problem-solving skills,
Yeah.
social emotional development.
Yeah.
Those are the building blocks for a healthy relationship with technology, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. You can't build a resilient imagination if you're constantly plugged in. But, and here's what I've been grappling with, even with the best intentions, a pantry full of art supplies, there's always that temptation to just default to screens,
Oh, for sure.
especially when I'm tired or short on time. It's like my digital security blanket.
I think a lot of us can relate to that. We're all navigating this digital landscape, figuring it out as we go. And that's where this concept of modeling comes into play.
Okay.
It's one of the most powerful tools we have as parents and caregivers.
So explain this to me, because I've definitely used the do as I say, not as I do line more times than I'd like to admit. And let's be honest, it never really works.
It doesn't work. Kids are incredibly perceptive. They pick up on everything.
Oh, they know.
They notice how much time we spend on our devices, how often we interrupt conversations to check a notification, how easily we get sucked into that digital vortex. And those behaviors, even if they're unintentional, they send a powerful message.
So what's the solution? Do I have to go off the grid, become a, tech-free hermit to set a good example?
Thankfully, it's not quite that drastic.
Okay, good.
It's about being mindful of our own screen use.
Yeah.
And making a conscious effort to model the behaviors we want to see in our kids.
So putting down my phone more often,
Yeah.
engaging in those face-to-face conversations,
Yes.
maybe even rediscovering my own love for non-digital activities.
Yeah.
You're really asking me to do some soul-searching here.
Well, maybe just a little. But think of it this way. By being more intentional about our own relationship with technology, we're not just setting a good example for our kids, we're improving our own well-being in the process.
Okay, that's a win-win I can get behind. But before we move on, I have to ask, what about those times when screens aren't the enemy? Like those educational apps, those documentaries that spark curiosity, even those video games that require, strategy and teamwork?
You're absolutely right. It's not about demonizing all screen time. It's about being discerning, choosing quality over quantity, and most importantly, being actively engaged in those digital experiences. And that, my friend, brings us to the concept of mindful tech use.
Mindful tech use. It's like they say, everything in moderation, right?
Right.
But instead of that extra slice of cake, we're talking about an extra hour of, I don't know, Minecraft.
Exactly. And that's where intentionality becomes so important.
Yeah, I'm
Just think of it like this. Every time you or your child picks up a device, you're making a choice.
A choice, okay.
Are you choosing connection, education, creativity, or are you choosing distraction, procrastination, disengagement from the real world?
Ooh, those are tough questions. And it's so easy to fall into those traps. I can't tell you how many times I've gone on my phone to quickly check something and I end up down this rabbit hole of totally random videos.
Oh, tell me about it. I've been there. But the thing is, recognizing those patterns, that's the first step.
Okay, so what's the next step?
The next step is about being more deliberate in our choices. So instead of just passively consuming whatever pops up on our feeds,
Right.
let's try to actively seek out content that aligns with our values, our interests, our goals.
So that could be anything from learning a new skill to
Yeah.
connecting with friends and family online.
Absolutely. Or even just having a good laugh. It's about being intentional with our time.
So it's about becoming the digital architects of our own lives.
Yes, exactly.
Not just the passive consumers of whatever the algorithm is throwing our way.
I love that. And that goes for our kids too, right? Instead of just setting those time limits, let's talk to them about their digital choices. What are they watching, playing, creating?
Right.
And most importantly, how do those choices make them feel?
That is so important.
Yeah.
It's not just about the content itself, but how it actually impacts us. I remember reading a study about how spending too much time on social media can actually make people feel more lonely and anxious,
It's true.
even if you're surrounded by, hundreds of virtual friends.
Yeah, researchers call it social comparison.
Oh, wow.
And it can be a slippery slope, especially for young people who are still figuring out who they are, right?
Totally.
So that's why those conversations about mindful tech use are so important. We need to give our kids the tools, the critical thinking skills to navigate the digital world in a way that actually enhances their lives, not detracts from it.
And it's not just about what they consume, but it's about how they interact, right?
Exactly.
Are they using technology to genuinely connect with friends and family?
Meaningful connections.
Yeah, or are they using it to kind of hide to avoid real-life interactions.
That's such a good point, and this is where those alternative activities we talked about earlier, they become even more crucial. Finding that balance between the digital and the real world, online connection, and face-to-face interaction. Because as amazing as technology is, it can never replace the richness of human connection.
This whole deep dive has been amazing. We've gone way beyond the typical screen time limits talk and really dug into the why. And even better, we've uncovered some really practical strategies for making screen time a more mindful and enriching experience for everyone.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? Giving you the knowledge and tools to make informed choices about technology.
So it's not about demonizing screens.
Not at all. It's about using them thoughtfully, intentionally, to enhance our lives, not control them.
I love that. So to our listeners out there, we'll leave you with this. How can you take what we've talked about today and shape your own relationship with technology? What changes, big or small, can you make to make sure that screen time is a conscious choice, not just a default?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and please keep the conversation going. Because in this ever-evolving digital world, one thing's for sure, the power to make those mindful choices, it lies with you.
And on that empowering note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, remember, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay connected both online and off.